Now, part of what makes Israel so much an attractive place for investors is chutzpah. Chutzpah is a quality which means that you simply have either cojones, okay, in Spanish, or you have the ability to take risk, okay, to really go for it. There's a professor by the name of Daniel Kahneman, who is a Nobel Prize winner. He has said that to be an entrepreneur is to be delusional, is basically to imagine that the odds which are against you are not affecting you. Those aren't my odds, they're his odds. I'm going to win. And that delusion is really chutzpah.
Israel is actually called the startup nation, and Tel Aviv is the business center of all of Israel, and that's why we are the startup city. We're actually ranked the #1 startup ecosystem outside of the United States, and it's mainly because in Tel Aviv we have over 1,000 early stage startups. That makes us, because we're a very small city, the highest amount of startups per capita in the world.
Starting a company in Israel is super easy. Society totally understands it. There's an ethos around it. There are lots of people that are willing to help you.
The ecosystem is built from 3 parts. The public, the academic, and the private. In Israel, the private sector begin very early to support all this activity. But once the public sector, the government, 25 years ago, begin to support with the programs as Tnufa and the main scientists, all this activity, this is when all the startup nation begin. Of course, startup nation is a really good PR stuff.
My name is Mira Marcus. I'm the International Press Director for the city of Tel Aviv. So that Tel Aviv has 1,000 early stage startups. In Tel Aviv is only 52 square kilometers. That means that we have 19 startups in every square kilometer. That means that you throw a stone in Tel Aviv, you hit a startup, right? You can't go anywhere without seeing a startup. That means that for every 430 residents, we have someone working at a startup. That's out of this world. That means everybody knows someone that works at a startup. Everybody knows a startup that they think is going to be the next best thing. And everybody has their own idea for a startup, and it's the best idea in the world. And everybody has a dream to have a startup and to be rich because you have the best idea in the world. I had a great idea this morning. If you want, I'll share it with you. But that's really how life is.
I'm John Medved. I'm the CEO and founder of Our Crowd. We're the world's largest equity crowdfunding platform. We're headquartered here in Jerusalem, Israel. In Israel, startups run the gamut from the traditional things that people think of Israel, cybersecurity. Everybody knows Israel's a cybersecurity power. Today there are 400 cyber startups here. That's out of about 1,500 worldwide. So literally almost 25%, over 25% of the world's cyber startups are here in Israel. We're very good at autonomous driving. We're really good at medical devices, at big data and analytics, at everything having to do with machine vision or computer vision. Robotics are great here. Drones are amazing here. We pretty much invented the drone business, you know, certainly at the military level. We're very good at semiconductor design and semiconductor technologies. We're very, very good at analytics and advertising technology. There are a lot of companies here that know how to drive lead acquisition and lead generation. There's a lot of Israeli companies in the data management and data analysis area. Storage is a big part of this country. Literally, it's hard to find a major area of technology that Israel is not involved with.
It's like in our veins, it's in our blood, this entrepreneurship. And when I say it's in our DNA, I'll take you back to the history of Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is it's a very young city. It's only 106 years old. But Jaffa, the old city of Tel Aviv, is very old. It's actually one of the most ancient port cities in the world. It's 5,000 years old. And any immigrant that came from Europe or from Africa to this area of the world had to come to Jaffa. That was the port city if you came through the sea. And everything around Jaffa was sand. And a few Jewish families that settled in Jaffa didn't like their life there. You know, there was streets and commerce and stores and schools and everything, but they didn't like their lives, and they sat together and thought to themselves, what can I invent that doesn't exist today in the world that will make my life better? And they decided to invent the city of Tel Aviv. We call those families the first entrepreneurs of Tel Aviv, and we call Tel Aviv the first startup of Israel, because they decided that they want to create a city where nothing existed here before. It was all sand. And they wanted it not only to be a city, but to be a garden city in the middle of the desert. That sounded insane. And they wanted it to be a Hebrew city, which didn't exist anywhere in the world. They wanted all the signs to be in Hebrew, and the spoken language to be Hebrew, the values to be Hebrew values, the schools to teach Hebrew. And everybody thought they were insane. But these 66 families left Jaffa, divided up the city, did a raffle. Every family got a piece of land, and they created this city. Now, if you walk the streets of Tel Aviv, you see it's very green. There's many trees. The garden city vision came true. And it's a completely Hebrew city. Most of the people here speak Hebrew. It's the spoken language. So their startup came true, and they inspire us, the people of Tel Aviv, every day to dream the impossible.
I'm Tzvi Shalgu. I lived in China for the last 20 years, since 1996. I did mostly supportive business for high-tech companies. We can talk about it later. And I'm living in Israel today. I think it's a convergence of many things that happen at the same time. And I think when the younger generation of engineers and scientific people actually started going abroad because Israel was too small for them. At the same time, big multinational companies started to identify this as a place with a lot of manpower or brain power, and R&D centers started to come here. First, just because Israelis were in key positions abroad and wanted to come back home. But later, because the manpower was available here, the prices also, the cost was lower than in the US. So it was whole a convergence of these phenomena where many people started to dare to do big things here. And the local character was just very, very sufficient for this. Israelis don't have a market at home for almost anything. We're super small, and we are like an island, basically. We're in the middle of a pretty hostile area. So if we need to do something, we need to sell it far away from home. And the moment that you have this, you must approach markets far away. You must dare to do things. An Israeli entrepreneur will have to invent something, and then he will have to sell it to American citizens in America and compete with American companies on their own market. Doing this is something which is pretty extraordinary. You have to be special. And when the world became flat in the recent 20 years, this made a huge difference. Because today there are tools to do it. Today it doesn't even sound weird that somebody from one country will develop a small high-tech company in another country. But 30 years ago, the obstacles were tremendous. It was only big multinational companies who could do things like this.
I'm Roy. I am the CEO of SOSA. If you look historically, from the first day Israel was founded back in 1948, if you look around us, it's a tiny place, very small, with only today 8 million people. And we don't have any natural resources. We don't have a local market. It's very limited. So just by itself, from the moment we were established, founded, we were all already in disadvantage. And the way to overcome physical disadvantage is to create something that does not exist, which is to innovate. And then if you also need to look outside of Israel, because it's a tiny market, then only technology innovation can really be exported in such a fashion at large scale. So just by the fact and the historical reasons of how Israel was founded, this is one driver. The other thing, unfortunately, we are surrounded by neighbors that are not madly in love with us. And this creates a constant necessity to survive through innovation. Even in the military, the first years of our ability to just survive, the country was founded into a military struggle. The day we were founded, the independence war started, because we just didn't have the right to exist based on our neighbors' opinions.
Let's face it, people have tried to kill our people, to destroy us for generations. It's not just one enemy who has come to destroy us. There have been enemies through all the generations who've tried to destroy us. But what do we say? We laugh. We go forward. We get Nobel Prizes. We make billions of dollars. We build startups. That's who our people are. Okay? And we have that ability to take the risk to say, what the hell? We're going to lose? Get over it. Try again.
In Israel, both boys and girls go into mandatory service in the Israeli Defense Forces, and when they're very, very young, they already get to be commanders of soldiers, which makes us believe that we're capable of anything in the world. I was on the bomb squad, and I was 18, and I taught soldiers how to take apart bombs. So when I was 20 and I got out of the army, I felt that I can do anything in the world.
In Israel, there's a compulsory service, and it's not a short one. It's not 1 year, There's no lottery. This guy will, this guy won't, like in Europe in many places. Here, everybody goes. Girls, boys, everyone. So many talented people who otherwise would be in Ivy League universities find themselves in the army. So this is a resource that not many armies in the world have. Okay, professional armies in the world, they need to recruit brains, they need to pay them decently, and they need to let them develop. We have those guys 18 years old, sometimes already after a bachelor degree in mathematics, and they're in the army. So the army has resources that he can use. And then he has a very big motivations to actually use them, because he needs the science. We really need the solutions, we really need the science for survival. So for many years, a lot of investment was done towards this kind of science. And today we actually enjoy a lot of the fruits of this, because younger people have very high level of knowledge, and they develop from those areas, and they came back to civilization, to the civil market, with a lot of know-how.
My name is Dan Balter. I'm the Vice President of Startau, the Entrepreneurship Center of Tel Aviv University. People finish the army at the age of 21 with all this, let's call it, toolkit of skills that they have learned, and they go and see the world and travel a little bit and see other cultures and meet face to face with the international and global problems and global challenges. And they get back to Israel, to this bubble of innovation and entrepreneurship, and they have all the tools, all the skills, and all the knowledge. They have met the challenges to begin and make solutions for it.
Hi, my name is Bruno Fernandez. I'm one of the co-founders and CTO of Nexar. It became extremely natural for us to look into Israel. Two reasons. One is the availability of extremely talented people here. I think it's a combination of really good academic centers as well as the army that kind of channels things. So hiring becomes easier perhaps than other places like in the Bay Area where we both used to work.
Many of these technologies come from the military. They started either in these unique units of the IDF, like 8200 and signal intelligence, or people coming from the Talpiot program or from the Air Force. But it's not so much the technology itself, but the cultural background that our entrepreneurs get from the military here. They learn how to be mission-oriented, how to lead teams, and to get stuff done and quickly.
Second thing really is it's very much a team, a group, a family culture. So you end up, a lot of the people that work with us here, they have worked with us for 9, 10, 15 years. So we end up having really it's my unit at the army, it's my team from the previous company, and that's again something that I have not seen in other countries. It's not really as prevalent, and it makes Israel really different. It's that network of people that helps you to actually go up.
Israel is a society that accepts failure, which means that, sometimes in Japan or in other cultures, if someone says, I had a startup and it failed, they lose face. But in Tel Aviv, it's very, very common that you can have a dinner conversation and you say, yes, I was a founder of a startup and it failed. People say, okay, what's your next idea? And that's how failure is treated. And that's also part of the Chutzpah, because how dare you have an idea, fail, and then try again? In most societies in the world, if you have an idea and fail, then go back to school, go to a company, go do something that's established. But here, many of the most successful startups are actually the third or fourth startup of a founder that failed already 3 or 2 times before.
I think if you enter a kindergarten in Israel and ask the kids who knows to do something, probably all of them raise hands and start shouting, I know, I know, I know. This is what the automatic reaction. If you do this in China, in kindergarten, I guess the kids will be much more reserved in their reaction, and they will not commit to anything they're not sure about, and they will definitely try to be the last ones, not the first ones, in order not to expose themselves. So the moment you have this in young age, don't expect to have creative people when they are after high school, after university.
Most people are afraid of failure. Tonight I'm going to a conference here in Jerusalem where all of the speakers are speaking about their screw-ups in life. It's one conference which is all about failure. And you're saying, how can you have a conference about failure? When you realize that failure is part of the process, then you have gone a long way into understanding the entrepreneurial lifestyle, which is, if you're going to do this stuff, you're going to fail. You can't win all the time. Nobody wins all the time. Not even, the best soccer player or best baseball or best rugby player in the world. You have failure. Except that failure is part of the process.
My name is Eran Shir. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Nexar. A key point was the creation of the VC industry in Israel by the government in the 90s, early 90s, and the model that they did it. They did a very specific model of matching funding in VCs when the other part of the money came from experienced investors abroad. Okay, so this is a program called Yozma that was very successful, and then I think after that it was off to the races. In general, if you look, and we've done the research about a decade ago, we've done the research in Tel Aviv University, and you can track most of the startup companies and the high-tech companies in Israel to 5 families based on large high-tech companies that either imploded and many people that worked there became entrepreneurs and founders after getting great education.
When the Yozma program was established, that's when the Startup Nation really got started in earnest. And there were dozens of funds established. First were Yozma, but there were only 8. But so many people said, I don't need the matching grant from Yozma. I'll do it anyway. And that's when I built my fund, Israel Seed Partners. We started with $2 million and a lot of chutzpah, and we grew to about $260 million in about 6 years of working very, very hard. So the Startup Nation really got started in the 90s, but we've only really hit our stride now. Because when you look at Israel's position relative to Asia, relative to Latin America, relative to the United States, it really only started in the last couple of years. And in the last 3 years, the number of dollars invested in this ecosystem has gone up 300%. So the Startup Nation is just getting started, in my opinion.
I think that the key point is to build an holistic ecosystem. So you cannot just have researchers. Researchers need business people. Business people need funding. The VCs need to have their own funding. You have to have the relevant people with experience to mentor and support. So really building a full ecosystem. And this is what we have here. We have talent, we have a very vibrant VC ecosystem. In terms of percentage out of the GDP, Israel is #1 in terms of the amount of VC money spent out of the GDP. R&D wise, we are #2, I think, after Korea. So lots of efforts, lots of funding, and an ecosystem that supports and helps and so on. It's also a matter of culture. Helping each other is part of our DNA.
You hear many countries who are trying to learn from other countries and trying to learn and copy models. Like we are looking on the Finns and we are looking on the Danes and on all kinds of, Singapore for inspiration. A lot of Chinese and other countries are coming here. I think it's not so easy to copy. It's not so easy to imitate models because the population lives in totally different ecosystems and sphere, and even a cultural or physical state. Okay, for a country to become a bit similar to what's happening here, you need to be a surrounded country with no market, which by definition is a very small country. Okay, less than 15 million people or 10 million people. And you need to be highly educated in terms of generations back, not necessarily university or schools, because the schools in Israel are not that great, but the heritage, the families, 2 or 3 generations back, people are educated, people had experiences all over the world. Anyone you catch here in the street and you check 2 generations back, probably lived in 2 or 3 continents. So we collected know-how from many countries. We are not afraid from changes, not afraid from trying, not afraid from many things that are not so normal for well-established countries, which have very organized and secure structures. In a big secure structure, you need to find your place. And everybody expects you to find a place in a bigger organization or in a bigger scheme. In Israel, there are no big schemes, there are no big organizations. So either you create them yourself, or you come there, you think it's big for 2 days, and in the second week you already have ideas how to change it to be bigger. I mean, people are not used to work in very big organizations, and the country is ever-changing, not stable. So I think if you have this environment in your country, you can come and try to imitate some things. If not, I don't think it's healthy to imitate us, because there's a lot of negativity also in the way we work. we are doing the best of what we can with what we have. If we had more, I'm not sure we should have behaved just like we behaved. It's not only positive. It's very positive because I admire a lot of people who are working here and what they do. But I must say that their cards are dealt in a totally different way than other countries. And I wouldn't recommend to other countries to have our cards. These are, it's a hard hand to deal with. It's not an easy situation.
I think really is that if other cultures like Spain or even the UK wanted to really copy some of the things that work here, is really that do not be afraid, and do not be afraid to break the rules and go beyond what is possible. One of the things, being raised and grown in Spain, one of the things that I always found it was that culturally everybody looks at you as like, why are you doing a startup, right? That was like a bad thing. It's your family, it's your friends, it's society in general is basically blaming you for like, what are you trying to do? Why don't you just get a stable job and be good? Whereas here is the opposite, right? People feel they're missing on something if they're not on the next startup, and actually become so active that people want to switch to the next one, because am I on the hottest one, or this is the hottest one that is coming next? And everybody's invested, right? I talk to people here, is like, oh, my uncle is in this thing, and my father is here, my aunt and my cousins, and everybody invests in everything, everybody's in a startup here. So that makes, it's the DNA of the country, and I think culturally a lot of the European countries and even the US to a degree, I think having that, let's not be afraid and let's go for it, I think it will be tremendously useful.
I think the main thing you want to learn is to be comfortable with failure, to be willing to not connect someone's failure with his social stature. I think that is the key problem many other societies have in trying to build some form of a startup hub. They don't look at the social problems, and these are typically the most important ones.
One thing I would say is tolerance to failure. When I look at other places around the world where is talent, there's talent everywhere. But you see that in some places, if you fail, you're done. You're done. Nobody will talk to you. And here, failing is, there's tolerance towards it. If you started a startup and you failed, it's okay, and you did your best, and you acted like you should be acting, professionally and in the right manner, you will be seen as a person that just gained more experience, and then in your next venture, you're likely to succeed better. This is very important. And the last thing maybe is what we did by taking the disadvantage of having a very small place with no market. It actually turned into an advantage, because if you don't have a market, you have to think globally from day one. So anyone developing a startup here or a product, from day one we think globally. Nobody thinks locally, and if you think globally, you think ahead, you think big. So this is one of the other things that, and by the way, you also think more creatively. So you think about technology and deep technology, because it cannot just be an operational business. You have to think globally and tech and deep tech. So that's another thing that could actually be implemented. Some of the other things are hard to learn, like culture and DNA and Chutzpah and things of that nature. You can't really learn them, but other things you can. So it's doable.
It's all about education. It's so basic. You don't need big funds, you don't need a huge ecosystem, you don't need this. You just need to create creative people and to create braver people who are not afraid to say what's on their mind and are not afraid to fail. Now this sounds simple, but go change the whole population in China towards this direction. That's not an easy task. But if somebody in China wants to have an ecosystem, he should think about young age. He shouldn't think about high school kids and university students. He should think about kids who are 2 and 3 and 4 years old and start from there. Make them be brave to take challenges, make them to not be afraid to fail, make them to be free in creating things, never mind what happens. And that's a challenge.
What other countries can learn from Israel is, first of all, the size of the country doesn't matter. I mean, the great part of this story is we're this tiny little country, 8.5 million people, and yet we really are the world's second most important startup ecosystem after Silicon Valley. And we did it with a very small population. We did it with a lot of external factors against us, having to fight wars, having boycotts launched against us, being far away from the markets that we're addressing, and yet we overcame, and no natural resources to speak of. We overcame all of that through chutzpah, through the ability to take risk, through hard work, intelligence, a sense of working together as teams, and a spirit to core. Part of the building a successful ecosystem is being delusional together. That delusion I spoke about before with Daniel Kahneman, he found something very interesting. He found that when people believe as a group in this delusion, they actually change the odds. The more people believe that you can succeed, the more your ecosystem gets ahead. So what I would urge other countries is, first of all, to celebrate your successes. When you have people who are being entrepreneurial and getting it done and building companies and exiting, make them heroes. Make them, in addition to the soccer players and the music, singers and whatnot, make them the kind of people that kids want to emulate. Start selling to yourselves that you can do it. And the more that your ecosystem believes that it's possible, the more you will change the odds. And then get out there and market. Because today, the world is a one little village, and everybody's competing for startup dollars, everybody's competing for these global markets. It's no longer an individual country game, it's a game of global alliances. And if you sit at home and don't get on the plane and go visit the way that you've been visiting countries around the world, it's not going to happen. The way it's going to happen is to get out there, punish yourself, travel, meet people, and tell the story, and work on your unique selling proposition. Every country has something unique which they can sell. We have chutzpah. Figure out what your special secret sauce is, and sell it, and sell it, and sell it again.
So one of the things that Israeli companies need to become really, really good at is how do they become global without having to relocate, which is a key issue that happens with a lot of them, that once they reach a certain level, they figure out our market is the US, but to be in the US, we need to be in the US. And it's not sustainable, right? Because you end up having only small to medium businesses here that then relocate to the US. So that's something that has to be solved. I think it's possible. You know, we want Nexar to be a company that is rooted and is in Israel for the long run, but it's non-trivial about how you create such a company.
So we're not alone, and we will not be alone, and we need to keep our advantage by nurturing education, but also building great companies, big companies. And one of the trends that we see right now is actually more and more Israelis are trying to build big companies rather than sort of young startups that will be sold at early stages.
Challenges are that I think many countries in the world are providing today ecosystems that at the end of the day will succeed to suck a lot of talent out of here. I think today bigger successful companies in Israel have this kind of, I would say, forces on them, moving to Ireland, moving to other places. They suffer tax-wise here, they suffer lack of employees here, because look, Israel just dropped last month to 4% unemployment, which is a totally unhealthy number. It means there are no people to recruit. And this means salaries will go sky high, and this means why not open an office somewhere else? Let's open in India. Let's open in other places where we can maybe develop some things. So Israel naturally will climb up in the chain and do more brain things here and less production things here. That's already happening. But I think if you ask me what is actually threatening the ecosystems here, this is what's threatening the ecosystems. The country cannot grow to its own talent. I mean, at the end of the day, people will start moving out of here. And add to this that other countries are learning and trying very hard to attract companies. There is no reason today why a young Israeli entrepreneur who has a good idea will not go to China and build a company in China. Why does he insist to do it here? Over there he will get a lot of grants, he will have laboratories, he will have a very nice ecosystem. The only reason he doesn't do it today is that he doesn't speak Chinese, doesn't have friends there, didn't spend time there to know about it, and the Chinese are not that good yet in marketing it. But this will change in the next 5-10 years. And how does Israel deal with this? Okay? At the end of the day, companies that are growing and born here in Israel have to mature in other countries because of the market issue. Okay? They move to America, or they move to China, or they move to other places. The trick will be to keep them as one company after they moved. So the country here will also gain something back. And this is not an easy task. This needs a very flexible government. And our government is not that flexible. They're doing, in recent years, they're doing very nice things actually, but no government is so flexible. It's very difficult for a government to drop the taxation to 4 or 5% in order to encourage people to still do business here, because they're losing income. So I think it's a huge challenge for Israel. The fact that other countries will learn how to attract entrepreneurs to come over. You look at what's happening in Berlin today, look at what's happening in Ireland today. They're learning fast.
And I think startups in Israel will face in the coming years is manpower, is getting enough people that are great, that are well educated, that are experienced, to scale the companies and to service all of the different companies that exist and emerge.
The biggest challenges for Israeli startups is manpower. We need more people. So we have to bring people from outside. We need you to come, and your listeners to come join us. But we also need to bring in more people from the inside into the picture. And there are 3 groups in Israel who are underrepresented at the moment in the entrepreneurial story. Number 1 are women. Okay, literally 85% of our degrees in computer science and engineering are men. We need to unleash women. We've got to bring them in, okay, in large numbers, and both as programmers and engineers, but more importantly as CEOs and leaders and investors in technology. Number 2 is we have a group here called Haredim, which stands for ultra-Orthodox Jews. It's the fastest growing part of our population. These are people who are very, very traditional. They are not involved enough in our ecosystem. Now, while we're increasing their numbers in academic programs, we need them more and more in the high tech, and that's coming in. And finally, we need to bring Arab Israelis in. Many of the Arabs don't serve in the IDF and the army, so they miss that army link to our startup culture. We need to bring them in now. They're coming in mostly into the medical technology because there are a lot of Arab doctors, but today I'm very proud to say that the Technion, which is Israel's largest and most important technology college, over 20% of the student body is Arab, and we hope that those graduates will join us in the startup nation.
The biggest challenge that we're facing in Tel Aviv in the field of startup is actually the growing of the ecosystem. There's 2 folds to it. Number 1 is competition over talent. Tel Aviv has the highest amount of startups per capita, and we also have the highest amount of engineers per capita, but that's not enough. Every startup keeps looking for more and more entrepreneurs, developers, designers to come work for them. And if I have a small startup, and it's the best idea in the world, of course, I'm competing for those engineers against the biggest companies in the world that are opening their research and development centers here, because Google, Facebook, LG, Deutsche Telekom, IBM, Apple, all of these companies and many more are opening their research and development centers in Tel Aviv. So if I'm an engineer and I need to decide if I'm going to work for a small startup that has a cute idea and there's 97% chance that it's going to fail, or if I'm going to go work for Google, a lot of them decide to go work for Google. So competition over talent is a huge challenge. Now, one of the best ways to deal with competition over challenge is to bring in foreign entrepreneurs, right? If we look at Silicon Valley, 50% of the workforce there is local Americans and 50% are foreigners from China, from India, from Japan, from Spain, from many, many places that are coming to work at the companies and startups in Silicon Valley. But in Tel Aviv, the ratio between local and international is 98% local and 2% international, because Israel has very, very strict immigration laws. You pretty much have to be Jewish to come live here and work here. And that's something that we're trying to overcome. How can the ecosystem still grow when there's such strict immigration laws? And actually, hopefully in 2017, we'll launch something called a startup visa, where anybody around the world, Spaniards included, will be able to apply for a visa to come work at a startup in Tel Aviv, or found your startup in Tel Aviv. The visa will be for 2 years, and you'll be able to extend it on a specialist visa if you want.
So everybody in the high-tech market sees this as a part of the solution. Let us import here engineers from Spain or from Hungary or from Poland or from India. And then we can grow the companies here to become bigger companies. And the government is now talking about doing this for the first time. In the last 10 years, they totally refused to do it. But now they can see that big companies are considering to move out. So they will have to open the market here to engineers from other countries. And don't forget that they say that this is the second ecosystem after Silicon Valley in terms of size. Silicon Valley is hundreds of thousands of Indian, Chinese, Israelis, all over the world are coming there. They're not American. But Israel is all Israelis. There's no foreigners here. So this has to change. If we want to keep our space, we will have to open the gates. And this will increase the competition, and Israelis are very good when you give them competition. You need to give them the competition.
We need more people. So we're calling on entrepreneurs all around the world to come and join us here in Israel. Build your startups together with us. Come live for a year or two. There are new visas for startup people. We need investors. We need entrepreneurs. We need brilliant people to work together. Come invest with us. Come work with our companies. Come distribute our products. Because this really is, today, startups are global. You can't be a little parochial country. I mean, we have no market here, right? And no one wants to be the king of Tel Aviv. We want to go attack big worldwide markets and go global from day one. And we're very good at that here in Israel, where our companies go out to the market and look for partners. And I want to use this opportunity to call upon your viewers to join us in this endeavor.